A few months ago, Carla and I were talking about putting our house on the market. And so, as I did, as every other homeowner does, you start getting the house ready. And I was cleaning the windows inside and out and getting all the cobwebs off. I pressure washed the driveway and just had it, sparkling. And we've since said, some other things have happened. We said, we're not going to put the house on the market. But it was something that the other day I was looking, and it's there in your back of your mind. You know it, but then you just start looking, and you're like, the cobwebs are back. There's stains on the driveway. And there is that sense that it's just, wait a minute, what did I do? I think there is a sense in which we are all dissatisfied with the world the way it is. And in our own ways, we want to make it better. Consider for a moment the people who have just gone through Hurricane Sally. I don't think many of them just sort of go, well, that's the way life is. Okay, my house is flooded. I'll just let it go. No, there's a sense in which every one of them are going to try to rebuild and make it better in some way or another. We see this social unrest in our country today because we see that there are social injustices going on, and we want to make it better. And so we're trying. People are trying to call attention to that. All of us are trying to rebuild or upgrade some facet of our lives today to make them better. I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, we're a lot like ants. Have you ever seen an ant pile, a mound, and then it gets kicked over? And what happens, especially with fire ants? It's like they just go all over the place. But if you really look at what they're doing, they're all grabbing bits and pieces of whatever the mound is. And then, it's like no time. And you look again, and there's the mound, all put back together. We do that a lot of times with our lives here. One person said, though, we all try to turn this moment into the paradise it will never be. And each of us faces the frustration that results from our failed attempts. So we can feel that frustration and go, wait a minute, what is this all about? But hopefully today I want us to answer two questions. What is your destination, and what is the point of this moment? As we look to sort of see what all these things are about. So we think about what is your destination. There is truly a sense in which we all groan. That there is a desire in each and every one of us to want things to be the way the Creator intended it to be. Paul talks about this in Romans 8 in verses 22 and 23. He says, "For we know that the whole creation groans and suffers the pains of childbirth together until now. And not only this, but also we ourselves, having the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting eagerly for our adoption as sons, the redemption of our body." Paul makes a point here. He says, creation is groaning. It recognizes it is not the way it was meant to be. And he says, we do the same. Especially when we have been given that first fruit of the Spirit. We've been given a taste of what it truly should be like. We groan in our bodies. Paul goes on in 2 Corinthians 5, talking there about our physical bodies versus the spiritual. And he says, "For indeed in this house we groan, longing to be clothed with our dwelling from heaven. Inasmuch as we, having put it on, will not be found naked. For indeed, while we are in this tent, we groan, being burdened, because we do not want to be unclothed, but to be clothed, so that what is mortal will be swallowed up by life. You see, we are longing for something better than this life. We're subjected to all of the trials, all of the afflictions that come in this life, whether it be in relationships or whether it's just being in our physical bodies. There is this groaning, this longing for something better. Paul David Tripp said it this way: the tears of a little boy who has been mocked on the playground are tears for paradise. The frustrations of a young professional with a boss who never seems to be satisfied is a cry for paradise. The grief of a young wife who misses her estranged husband is a cry for paradise. The grumpiness of an old man whose body doesn't work as it once did is a cry for paradise. We all cry out for paradise. But while we are in this life, I would say that there is a danger that we must be aware of. There is a danger of what we'll call this destination mentality. And that is that we begin to make this moment the paradise that we so long for. That we settle that this is just what it is. That we live for this moment. And there's a problem that can come from that then, if we have that kind of mentality. First of all, I would say that happiness then becomes based on the present situation. Then we start looking for our comfort and our ease based on what we experience in the present situations. And so we start looking for those good moments in our life. It becomes easier to complain rather than to be content. We find ourselves giving into envy of what someone else has. And really the bottom line comes is that we can get to a point where we blame God. Because if we hold to that destination mentality, we struggle then to believe that God is loving, God is good, God is kind, God is faithful. Because if God is all of those things, why am I in this situation here? Where is God's love when, and you fill in the blank. Where is God's love when my child dies? Where is God's love when I've lost my job? You see, we can get so focused that we think if this is that paradise that I'm just trying to make it happen, make it work. We lose sight. And we try to define all of what we are by the present moment. Meaning then that all of my hopes and my dreams rest on what happens here. And if that's the case, then what happens is, if I don't get that promotion that I thought I deserved, I'm a wreck. If I don't go out with that popular person, then who am I? You see, then we begin to define the good life. And we measure it by, well, how much stuff do I have? See, if I have a lot of stuff, then I must have the good life. If I have just a little bit, no, not so much. And our sense of well-being is then tied to being better than someone else. If I'm better than you, I'm okay. But the reality is we can always find someone who's better than us. We can always find someone who is worse off than us. You see, what we need to do is remember where we are going. Because if we are God's children, He has prepared a paradise beyond our imagination. Beyond anything that we can even comprehend. He says, I've got it ready for you. Peter says in 1 Peter 1, verses 3 through 5, Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who according to His great mercy has caused us to be born again to a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to obtain an inheritance which is imperishable and undefiled and will not fade away, reserved in heaven for you, who are protected by the power of God through faith for a salvation ready to be revealed in the last time. God's plan from before there was ever a moment of time has been to bring us into a loving relationship with Him through the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And He says, I will bring it to ultimate fulfillment when you are with me at the end of time. That's His plan. And Peter tells us about it. He says, you have an inheritance. But notice how Peter describes this inheritance. The reality is he doesn't even really describe it because it's too far beyond him to even describe. The only thing that he can do in the way of description is he tells us what it's not. He says, it's not perishable. It's not defiled. It's not fading away. And all of those things are exactly what happens here in this life. Life here is defiled. Life here is fading away. Life here is perishing. So we need to be reminded our final destination is with God. And if it's with God, then that means right here and now is not paradise. And we can't make it into paradise. So then, let's think then for a moment about this moment. What's the point of this moment? If I've got a destination and I know where I'm going, what's the point of now then? I would say only when we understand our future and know it can we truly understand the present. Because knowing our glorious destination means that today, means that this moment is not paradise. But what it does tell us is that it is preparation. God has placed us in this sin-broken world, filled with sin-scarred people, to prepare us for something better. I think I've said before, I've had someone ask me, why isn't it that God immediately takes us up to heaven right after we're baptized? I'd love that, wouldn't you? Man, that'd be the greatest thing ever. But He says, you're not ready. You've got to get prepared. And this life is meant to prepare each and every one of us for that moment when we see God face to face. Paul says in 2 Corinthians 4, verses 16 through 18, therefore we do not lose heart. But though our outer man is decaying, yet our inner man is being renewed day by day. There's the perishing. My body's decaying. I don't have all that brown hair that I used to have. I got gray now. As I walk up steps, You hear my knees creaking. I'm decaying. At least my outer man is. But not my inner man. And he goes on to say there in verse 17, for momentary light affliction is producing for us an eternal weight of glory far beyond all comparison. While we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. I want you to just look there for a moment at verse 17. Paul says, for momentary light affliction. That means it's short in time. It's limited suffering. Now, each and every one of us may say, wait a minute, I don't feel like what I'm going through right now is momentary light affliction. But what Paul is trying to do is draw a comparison with where you are right now, with what you're going through right now, and what is to come. Because he says, what you're going through now, it is producing. That word means to work out. To do that from which something results. He's saying, this affliction is producing in you. It's making something. And he says, it is producing an eternal weight of glory. Far beyond all comparison. That's to the supreme, to the nth degree is what he's saying here. So he's saying, look at what you're going through right now. And however bad it may be, he says it doesn't compare with what's in store for each and every one of God's children. You see, every moment of this life is preparation for our final destination. God is using the hardships that you're going through. God uses the joys that we do have in this life to complete the work He has begun in each one of us. That means our friendships, our marriages, our jobs, our church, our family are all part of God's tools, if you will, that He is using to get us ready for Him. We've said many times before, a lot of ways, marriages are not necessarily meant to make us happy, they're meant to make us holy. Because they take us from our selfish, focused being and say, you look at somebody else. That's what parenting does, right? I now have to care for this other being. And I learned what it means to be patient. And I would say, even this pandemic, God is using to get us ready for eternity with Him. Because God is not surprised by anything. I don't think God turned the page and goes, oh, 2020, whoa, there's a virus there. I don't know what to do with that. He says, I know exactly what's going on. He says, I know exactly what is going on in your life right now. There is nothing that you have experienced or will experience that surprises God. And if you are His child, He is saying, I've got you right where I want you. Because I'm working on you to change you from the selfish being that you were into the selfless spiritual being that I want you to be. It is also, though, this moment is perspective. because this preparation tells us who we are. We are pilgrims on a journey. This perspective is everything. We must have this perspective. Why is it that athletes go through all of the training that they do? Why do they put themselves through such grueling circumstances? Because they understand that in those moments, that's not the final thing. They're looking for something better. The football players that go through the dog days of summer know that that is going to prepare them for that game. The Olympians that keep training, that get up at 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. each and every day, they're training because they say, I know that this is going to make me better. But they have that perspective that says, I've got to go through this to get there. We have to have the same perspective. In Hebrews chapter 12, verses 13 and 14, it says, all these died in faith, without receiving the promises, but having seen them, and having welcomed them from a distance, and having confessed that they were strangers and exiles on the earth. For those who say such things make it clear that they are seeking a country of their own. If you read on in the passage there in Hebrews, it talks then about, then verse 16, they desired a better country, a heavenly one. It goes on to say that God is not ashamed to be called their God, for He has prepared a city for them. We have to see ourselves as pilgrims, not residents here. That's vital to getting through this life. Think about it. Let's go back to our athlete's example. When the athlete grabs the weight and they're going to destroy their muscle, they don't sit there and lift it up and go, wait a minute, that hurts. And leave it and go, wait a minute, why is this happening? They recognize there will be pain. They recognize there will be hurt in the training that gets them to some other place. So when you and I are going through problems, don't look at it and say, why is this happening? Why is there so much hurt? Look at it from saying, God, what are you trying to teach me? When our families aren't what we want them to be, look at it to say, God, what do I need to learn from this situation? God, what is it that you want me to know? Rather than saying, look at how bad my life is. Because God says, I've got something better for you. And finally, I would say that this moment is also provision. That the guarantee of our future inheritance in heaven assures us that we will have all the grace we need in the present. God says, I've got a home for you. You have an inheritance. Period. And when God says that, that means that He's going to give you everything you need right now in this moment so that you can obtain your inheritance. Peter says it this way in 2 Peter chapter 1, verses 3 and 4. Seeing that His divine power has granted to us everything pertaining to life and godliness, through the true knowledge of Him who called us by His own glory and excellence, for by these He has granted to us His precious and magnificent promises, so that by them you may become partakers of the divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in the world by lust. God says, my divine power has given you everything you need pertaining to life and godliness. He says, I'm going to give you everything you need for this moment. If you're having troubles in your marriage, if you're having troubles with your children, if you're having troubles on your job, He says, I'm giving you what you need if you trust me, so that you can overcome. And most importantly, He gives us Himself. Because God doesn't say, okay, you're on your own until death. Hope it works out. He says, no, I'm right there with you. I'm going to walk each step with you. Because Jesus said that's what it was all about. Me coming to this earth and knowing what you go through. Knowing what it's like for your body to start decaying. Knowing what it's like to have family troubles. All of those things, He says, I know. And I'm right there with you. I will not let go. That's the Creator of the universe, right there beside you. And He says, I'll give you all and everything you need so that you can overcome, so that you can reach your final destination. So I ask you this morning, what do you see as your destination? Whatever hardships you're facing, whatever joys you're enjoying right now, realize that this here is not home. We have a better place. So don't try to make it home. Because it's going to just decay. By God's grace, Jesus has paid the ultimate price for you, so that you can be with Him in all eternity in His glory. And God is seeking to use this moment right now. And every moment that will come, He is using it to mold you and to make you into what He wants you to be, into what He designed you to be. So let Him mold you. Don't resist. This morning, are you in Jesus Christ? Do you know where you're going? He offers that assurance to each and every one of us. He says, I've got a place. Come join me. Do you know that you join Him today? If you died right now, do you know where you go? His invitation is open to all of us. Won't you come as together we stand and sing?